Turning the clock back to the early 1900s, the beach was divided into various groups. The 1900's, who occupied the North Deal Beach, the old Pier Gardens, now known as Central Parade, the 1900's, which were south of the pier and the warmer odours, and what seemed as a foreign country was the Kingsdowners or Donkeylanders. There was a sailing lifeboat at the north end and one at Warmer. Trying to become a crew member to any one of these boats if you were outside the particular area would be almost impossible. Therefore, boatmen in between the areas in those days had their own particular boats. Their biggest were always ready for instant launching. The boat would be sitting on stocks, the bow would be facing the sea, the slip chains were always on, and many greased woods were at hand and all ready for a quick launch. The main boats on the beach in those long lost days were the Rose Marie, belonging to Fred Upton and stationed at the pier yard. Next was Flint's Roberts with the Golden Spray, which was stationed just south of the Royal Hotel, Darky Bud's boat the Britannic, and Harry Meakin's Lady Beatty, which was stationed at the south end. It was recognised in those days that schoolboys, all of which were boatmen's sons, were expected to help in all activities, launching and recovering the boats when needed, shaking out sprats and herring, and in the summer holidays looking after the small rowing boats and deck chairs. Not a great task, but it kept them out of mischief, learnt them the ropes, and put a couple of pence in their pockets. There was Elga's canning factory in Sandown Road, which took the local sprats and herring. Also at the factory was the bushel man. His job was to spice and barrel the fish ready for export. Waiting and wondering what your father had caught and comparing it to your friend's dad was then a little exciting. Getting the sprats boxed and loaded onto the wooden barrows was another job expected of the young lads in those days. They then had to push the heavy laden barrows to the fish factory, and after unloading the boxes they returned to the beach for another load. This continued until all the fish had been delivered to the factory. What sort of Christmas the lads had in those days depended on a lot of the fishing season. Like many of us, they hung up their stockings, usually sea boot stockings, which in the morning had, if they were lucky, a few small toys, a couple of oranges and some nuts in them. There was a long way to go to get through the winter, and money was normally tight, so they were thankful for anything that they received. After the sprats had finished, which was usually in the middle of January, there was very little else to do unless there was a hovel. This could involve assisting a barge or a schooner into Ramsgate, or helping to refloat a ship or yacht that had become stranded on the Goodwin Sands. Hopefully this would mean extra cash, but the possibility of waiting months before it was awarded. So mothers had to be very careful not to overspend, so they could get a young lad through the winter. Asking for a penny to go to school with was never a very good idea. As the young lads got older, they would start to go afloat with their old man and start learning what to do while afloat, hauling pots, shooting nets and lines, and in the summer season some would go as second hand in a motorboat with visitors, or take some posh visitors out for a row. The season would start again about Easter. Usually it turned out very cold with an easterly wind, and as lads, some went to the golf course to earn a few bob. They loved the game but hated carrying the clubs. Well, who wouldn't? But again it gave them a couple of coppers to spend. The caddy house was a place where everyone got to know a bit more about the other fisher folks. It was about the only place to earn a few bob in the bad season. Some of the fishermen became very good golfers. There was a mixture of people from all walks of life at the caddy house. Fish hawkers, labourers, bricklayers, all kinds of people looking for a shilling until something better turned up. Some of them seemed to always have a few bob to play cards, which at times turned to fighting, and if you listened you could learn quite a lot about other things that you had heard rumours about. If you did manage to get a caddying job, the idea of meeting a few mates and having a drink first was always priority. The mysteries about the pubs and various stretches of seafront were always appealing. The boatmen always seemed to be having a lovely time down the North End, which you would find to be the case if you got to know more about the other chaps that you met down the golf club. If you went to the North End, the stone houses and capstans that were still there would be of great interest and fascination. It could be quite a novelty to watch a capstan pulling up a boat. On the plot south of the pier, the South Enders had ordinary circle-shaped winches. I suppose when the promenade was built for visitors, the capstans and boats would have taken up too much of the seafront when the boats were being pulled up. The lifeboat was still at the north end in those early days of the 1900s. There was a big argument about moving the lifeboat to Warmer. The Warmer site was chosen because of the congestion at the north end. Another argument was over the water level at low tide at the north end. On occasions, a ship would go ashore on the sands, but until the starting of the war, strandings on the Goodwins in those days were becoming fewer. There were still one or two big sailing ships being towed in from the sands, either from grounding or from being in danger of grounding as the wind had dropped and they were unable to make way. Sometimes a tug would circle via the pier and take 6 men off to a sailing ship, then tow her to safety. Tugs were always anchored off Deal, waiting for a job to turn up. They anchored around 200 yards off the pier head. This was part of the channel which became known as the tugboat stream. Quite often the Deal galley punts and tugs took off to the Goodwin Sands together when a ship went aground. On one occasion, when a vessel was spotted ashore on the sands, a galley launched and a tug got up steam. The galley was carrying too much sail in her haste to get to the sands. She was going so fast that she ploughed herself under and sank. Luckily the tug was near and saved all the crew. The first fishing of the year was always for Wilkes and Huss. This started in April and was continued until the summer tripping season started, a regular way of life until war was declared. The lads would get up at 5 a.m, have breakfast, scrape and varnish boats all day that would be used for visitors, then off after tea shooting trammel nets and laying pots. They had an old boat called the Paint Pot. She was used for hauling the pots and trammel nets. Their catch was a bushel or so of Wilkes, and with luck 2 or 3 score of Huss. Wilkes were 8p a gallon and Huss 3 shillings a score in those long ago days, and at the end of the week you could quite often be paid 5 shillings, and this went a long way. If you were old enough, friendly dart matches took some of the lads to various pubs. Jock McCluskey had a snooker table. Again the people from the golf course were part of the scene, plus a few sailors, navy and merchant men home on leave or waiting for a ship. So the education of the boatmen's lads in various ways of the sea and shore was developed. Everybody looked forward to the regattas, rowing and sailing being the main means of propulsion, and it was naturally nearly always the young lads that did very well in the racing. Some learned to dance a bit, although they were never happy on a dance floor, but felt they should make the effort. After all, that's where the girls were, and being quite healthy lads, it was some sort of a must. On one occasion, one of the lads went onto the pier one evening. There was a dance pavilion on the end, and at the bar, while he was having a drink, trying to work up a bit of Dutch courage, a young lass who he knew slightly came and said she was being bothered by a fellow. He asked her if she would like to dance or go for a walk. She chose to go for a walk, and the world took on a different meaning. Nothing changed along the foreshore for a long time. The older men were always talking about rescues they had done in the past, and the severe storms they had gone afloat in. Apart from saving the odd swimmers, or a boat trapped under the pier, nothing exceptional happened. The seasons came and went. Once in a blue moon a ship went aground. As the lads got older, many left the beach and moved to better jobs, or emigrated in the hopes of a better life.